Okay, everybody, this is the book we're going to be talking about today, The Creative Act, A Way of Being by Rick Rubin. This is going to be a little bit of a different video. It's going to be actually very similar to the one that I just made about Jean-Paul Sartre's Existentialism and Human Emotions, where I just sort of flipped through a book looking at my annotations. This one, though, is going to work together along with a post over at Fantasy Author's Handbook. So if you're coming to this from YouTube, by all means stay with me, watch this video, then follow the link. I'll put it here in a subtitle. It'll also be in the notes in the comment section, excuse me, or in the description. Go and read the blog too. If you're coming from the blog and have already read the blog, this video goes along with it in some interesting way, I'm sure, right? I'm doing this first. We're just going to flip through it. I'm not going to go into like who Rick Rubin is or all that kind of stuff. I'll maybe do a little bit more of that on the blog if you've already seen that. This is a book that has been getting a lot of attention lately. I've seen other YouTube videos about it. I've seen it talked about all over the place. It's gotten strangely mixed reviews. That I can kind of see in some cases. We'll talk a little bit about that as we get started in here. Book is from just 2023, right? So it's barely a year old. And this is really sort of takes the creative impulse, the creative process, as a sort of in a sort of general way, right? Rick Rubin comes from really the music industry. So he talks a lot about music, but I think he does a terrific job throughout of really just talking about art, about creativity, about the impulse to create art, the sort of process of creating art. And for me, obviously, I went into this as a writer and as somebody who works with writers, talks about writing, teaches writing, writes about writing, etc. And this is extremely useful, I think, for those of us who work in prose, yeah, and not in music, but also I think this is great for if you're a painter, if you're a dancer, if you're a filmmaker, a game designer, right? Everyone who's doing anything creative should be reading this. And right away I took a picture of this when I first started reading it and posted this on Twitter. And you'll have seen it on the blog if you've seen that already by now. I wrote on the bottom of this, every book about writing, any creative endeavor, should start with this. Let's read it. Nothing in this book is known to be true. It's a reflection on what I've noticed, not facts so much as thoughts. Some ideas may resonate, others may not. A few may awaken an inner knowing if you forgot you had. Use what's helpful. Let go of the rest. Each of these moments is an invitation to further inquiry, looking deeper, zooming out or in, opening possibilities for a new way of being. See, right? I love that. And I love it for all the reasons that I didn't love Save the Cat. This book doesn't say there's one way of doing it. We've cracked the secret. If you're doing it in any other way, then you don't know what you're doing. You suck, whatever. Right? He is saying right up front, use the bits and pieces of this that make sense to you, right? Think a little bit about the bits and pieces that don't. Do with it as you will, right? For your art, for your creative impulse, for just whoever you are, right? And in the circumstances that you're in. This is not, it says right up front, this is not going to be a step-by-step instruction book for whatever it is, right? How to write a screenplay in 23 minutes or something like that. So I can't flip through every single page, but like I talked about when we were looking at that Sartre book, sometimes I just sort of call out something and put a little star there. Creativity is not a rare ability. It is not difficult to access. Creativity is a fundamental aspect of being human. It's our birthright, and it's for all of us. Right? Everybody is a creative human being. We all are. Whether that's expressed in the written word or in music, or some combination of all of these different things. To live as an artist is a way of being in the world, a way of perceiving, a practice of paying attention. So a lot of what here I was you'll see my notes kind of saying, yeah, you're losing me here. But a lot of it is, yes, this is what I've been saying all along. Like I could go through here, and I'll try to, at least a little bit, in the blog post. This is what I've been saying all along. Here's a blog post that I wrote that says more or less exactly the same thing from 10 years ago or however long ago, right? So this is this is one of the things I love about this book. Not that it agrees with me, right, in some kind of lockstep way, but that it agrees with me in interesting new ways, different ways, and then it disagrees with me in other ways. And it got me thinking, right? So let's see if we can find some of those moments. Goes too far into the metaphysical for me here, right? That's the kind of complaints that I started to see. And I think, having read it, there's a lot more of the sort of the universe will do this for you. You have to do this for the universe, that kind of stuff, toward the beginning of the book. And I think that that's turning some people off, right? It almost turned me off as well. I pressed on. You should too, because it very quickly becomes much more practical, but again, not prescriptive. Not here is the way to make this happen, and if you don't do it exactly this way, then you're doomed to horrible failure. This was an interesting one where I underlined the universe is only as large as our perception of it. That made me think. Because I don't know that, on the surface right away, I don't think I agree with that, right? The universe is this giant thing that's been around for billions and billions of years that does not have any ability to understand me or care about me or recognize me down here on one planet whizzing around, one star whizzing around, one supermassive black hole. Yeah. But at the same time, right, isn't that what science is doing? The James Webb Telescope is saying, hey, I think the universe is larger than we thought it was in different ways, right? And so now our perception of it, the universe, has changed. So is that what it is? I don't know. But that's the kind of stuff, right? In this book, it gets you starting to sort of think about more than just, how many chapters should I have? How many words are in each chapter? Is it okay to have more than one POV, right? That kind of stuff. And here, right, it goes from one paragraph to the next, it goes from star to no. Because here, where he's basically saying the act of creation is an attempt to enter a mysterious realm. That's a way of saying something that I agree with. I don't know that I would say it with those words, but that's why we read each other's work. So we can see that, points made in other words by other people. Art is our portal to the unseen world. I think so, right? There's something, and you can come up with whatever kind of religious or spiritual or metaphysical, I hope not an explanation for it, but just sort of some way of expressing that strangeness of the creative act where, where did you get that crazy idea? And most of us in our honest moments have to say, I have no idea. It appeared in my head as if by magic, right? Where I get nervous is where I then am told that I have to have this spiritual component, because I don't think that I do. But, right? And, again, this is not a book that I think you just sort of read and you go, I've got it. Now I'm going to follow the formula, right? Hit all these bullet points or something like that. This is a book where you just draw a question mark every once in a while. It's not unusual for science to catch up to art eventually, nor is it unusual for art to catch up to the spiritual. I don't know what he means. And is it, I don't think I'm the only one who loves it when I don't know exactly what an author means. He's writing and he's acting in very uncertain territory. What I've described, borrowing a line from the movie Oh Brother, Where Art Thou? The triumph of the subjective. That's what this is. There's no math behind this. Someone will tell you, oh, this is the optimum word count for a novel. Okay. Sure. But there's no math behind this. Yeah. And so there are things like this where I've talked about what every author needs to have intellectual curiosity. I shared things like a letter from Walt Whitman where he just sort of described the day that he spent, not really doing anything, but observing the world around him, right? Material for our work surrounds us at every turn. It's woven into conversation, nature, chance encounters, and existing works of art. Yeah. For all of you out there who say, well, when I'm writing, I don't read. That drives me crazy, because I'm worried that it's going to, infect what I'm doing or inspire what I'm doing or somehow enter. Yeah, I hope so. It's going to anyway, right? And if you're not reading, then whatever else you're doing while you're writing, or while you're working on that one project, is going to infect that as well, is going to influence that as well. Whatever that is, whatever TV show you're watching, whatever you heard on the radio, whatever's happening on the news, that conversation you had at work, the conversation you had at home. Yeah? And existing works of art. Read all of these. Or at least that's how I interpreted that. Right? That's the point that I brought into what Rick Rubin was saying. So I'm just gonna keep kind of flipping until I get to just stuff to talk about here, and there's a lot. Here I'm asking quality over quantity, right? Because here he's talking about if you want to create great works of art, you should read great works of art, right? View great works of art, listen to great works of art, etc. That's one that I'm a little iffy on too, right? I've also talked about the value you can get from reading a Doc Savage novel, right? Reading old Pulp Fiction, reading stuff that is considered to be trashy or whatever. I hate that word. Dismissive kind of stuff, yeah. So I've always said, it's not right what you know, it's right what you feel. And I think this kind of backs me up on that to some degree. If we focus on what's going on inside ourselves, sensations, emotions, the patterns of our thoughts, a wealth of material can be found. Our inner world is every bit as interesting, beautiful, and surprising as nature itself. It is, after all, born of nature. Yeah? This is, for me, for authors, this is important to really consider. How much of, beyond sort of the details, the plotting, the character sheet, whatever, the world building, how much of your fiction is about how those characters feel, what it feels like to be that person in that moment. To me, that's entirely more important than anything else. I'm going to try this exercise. It's about hitting a pillow for 5 minutes, which is a long time, and then starting to write. That's weird. I've never tried it, but just because it's weird and I've never tried it doesn't mean that it might be really super cool and really useful. A whole other series of videos about why I'm reluctant to remember my dreams. I understand that there are people out there in the world who have good dreams. I'm not that good. There is no wrong way. There is only your way. Thank you, Rick Rubin, for saying that out loud. Tell it to the people who wrote Save the Cat. We're all different and we're all imperfect. And the imperfections are what makes each of us and our work interesting. We create pieces reflective of who we are, and if insecurity is part of who we are, then our work will have a greater degree of truth in it as a result. Yeah? Can self-doubt be of service to us? Rick Rubin thinks so, and I agree. This is, I think, the power of this book, right? Just to have somebody say, There's no one way to do it. There's no best way to do it. There's your way to do it. Put yourself into this thing. Whatever this thing is, whether it's a song or a novel we're talking about, fiction, put yourself into it. You're the only one with your voice. I've said that. And I just love knowing that I'm not the only one who thinks that. I know that's not true, right? Because I got that from other people. Here I'm telling myself to study the Buddhist concept of, I'm going to ruin all of the just terrible pronunciation, papancha. I will. I've already downloaded a long article about that. Yes and yes, if you start from the position that there is no right or wrong, no good or bad, and creativity is just free play, with no rules, it's easier to submerge yourself joyfully in the process of making things. Yes. We're not playing to win, we're playing to play. And ultimately, playing is fun. Perfectionism gets in the way of fun. A more skillful goal might be to find comfort in the process, to make and put out successive works with ease. Oh, right. Yes. Exactly. Yes, with an exclamation mark. So if there are chapters in this book, you're seeing the organization of it is very kind of loose, but it begins with these kind of almost set like poems, right? It's kind of, in some cases, feel a little bit non sequitur-y. Did I just make up that word? Art creates a profound connection between the artist and the audience. Through that connection, both can heal. I circled that because I agree that that is true. Here's right. This is what I'd rather, write next to something than no, you're just wrong. Why are you making me want to light this book on fire? Or yes, I've said that exact same thing in a blog post like 10 years ago. Distraction is not procrastination. Procrastination consistently undermines our ability to make things. Distraction is a strategy in service of the work. I don't know, right? Does he mean that maybe that what we were talking about in terms of intellectual curiosity and noticing things and noticing the world around you, if you're distracted by something, maybe that's your brain kind of saying, hey, fill me up with some stuff, right? And having been filled up a little bit with some more stuff, we can go back to the project at hand. Yeah. Another yes, the purpose of the work is to awaken something in you first and then allow something to be awakened in others. And it's fine if they're not the same thing. We can only hope that the magnitude of the charge we experience reverberates as powerfully for others as it does for us. And, I think just like anybody who talks about art, who enters this world of the subjective and kind of just tries to discuss something that is so still really mysterious, that is about just kind of concepts of consciousness, he's sometimes kind of struggles around looking for metaphors and, I'm looking for things that are like, this is energy, right? What exactly do you mean by that? This is a charge, this is a seed, that kind of thing. I'll try to pull this whole thing out for the blog post, because this is really I think for me, something that needs to be said about rules and formulas, and there's only one definitive outline for a novel kind of nonsense that we successfully batted down in our look at Save the Cat. Impatience is an argument with reality. Some of these, I just finished reading this really a couple days ago, and it didn't take me long to get through it. But it's interesting to kind of look back at some of these notes and just say, wow, I wonder what made me star that. If there is a rule to creativity that's less breakable than the others, it's that the need for patience is ever present. Boy, is that true. I've written about that too, right? Patience, patience, patience. This is one of the hardest parts. Definitely hard for new authors to get into. Definitely something that if you're coming from sort of the entrepreneurial world, the business world, any form of art is going to get you frustrated because there is no sort of business plan that you can create and follow and then you will definitely succeed. It's just not possible. It's not possible. It is really ultimately, you have to write the best, most interesting, most heartfelt thing you can create and then hope that some giant batch of perfect strangers separated by space and time also feel the same way or start feeling a different way because of something that you wrote. This is just not something that you can mix together in a test tube. Okay, it's just not. The goal is to live your life in the service of art. Do all sorts of stuff as a hobby. I kind of noodle around with guitars as a hobby, right? But if you're going to write for real, right? If you're going to send this to agents or you're going to publish this, it's your life's work. Is your life's work. This one, oof. A whole other blog post. This might be next week or a couple of weeks from now. I check 15 of the 20 thoughts and habits not conducive to the work. You know, I mean, this one I felt seen and not necessarily in a good way, you know, but I hear you, Rick Rubin, and I'm going to think about this stuff and I'm going to work on this stuff if I agree that you're right that I should. Yeah, because like we learned by reading Sartre that I exist in this world as a separate human and I have to create my reality, right? With the help of the people around me, including Rick Rubin. When something interesting starts to come together, it arouses delight. It's an energizing feeling of wanting more, a feeling of leaning forward. Follow that energy. This is what I mean, right? I wouldn't use the word energy. But what word would I use? Still, at the same time, I agree with every bit of that sentiment. This is something that I want to add to a post that I wrote some time ago called Schrodinger's Idea. So look for that in the next, or in an upcoming Best of Fantasy Authors Handbook. I find this to be true, I wrote. Even in a single work session, moving between multiple projects can be helpful. I do this all the time, right? In my work as an editor, it's very, very rare. Every once in a while on a kind of deadline crunch, I will focus in deeply on one thing. And, you know, just because I have to clear that. But for the most part, I'm working on multiple projects all the time. And I do think that that's actually better. You would be surprised how many times, you know, as an editor, I'm working on 2 books at the same time by very different authors, obviously very different books. Yet something in one edit informs something that the other author is doing. And I'm kind of bouncing those ideas back and forth just between me and myself and these 2 manuscripts. So again, Rick Rubin, you're right. Work on multiple things at the same time, yeah? And yes, this whole thing about artificial deadlines, I'm going to try to remember to make sure that this is in the blog post as well. Because I think that there's a lot of authors out there in the indie sphere in particular who are saying, I have to have this book done and out by magical date, right? For the 9 millionth time, do I have to say that anyone who's told you what the Amazon algorithm is does not know what they're talking about? Right? Putting an artificial deadline on your work is just going to hurt you. Anyway, but I mean, videos about each of these, blog posts about each of these, whole books about these things. Here's a, right, as the editor and author of fantasy novels, does it have to be a series? Rubin said, do not let the scale of your imagination get in the way of executing a more practical version of your project. We may come to realize that this version is better than the initial seemingly impossible vision. I can't tell you how many times authors have come to me and said, okay, so this is book one of a planned 21 book series. Like, why would you ever in a million years do that? Why? I understand that, you can point to these successful long-running series. Boy, I had a big hand in making a bunch of those happen while I was at Wizards of the Coast, and I still do, right? I'm not anti-series. But if you start with that from the beginning, you are putting so much on yourself, especially if this is the first novel you've ever written in your life, and it's book one of 20 or book one of 15 or book one of more than one. Are you sure that's necessary? Are you sure that's what you want to do? Is that actually helping you? And again, I've worked with authors where, wow, right? They did it. Right out of the starting gate, 5 books. it all hung together, right? That author got it all together, and terrific, right? I can tell you for sure that is a rare thing. That most of the authors that I've worked with have been better off just writing this book, and let's work on this. Let's make sure this is the best book you know how to write now. And then let's see where that goes. And then who knows, you might just decide, you know what, after all, I'm not going to write 20 more books in this world. I've got this other idea. I've learned about this now. My interests have changed. There's no contract out there. Nobody is saying like, but, oh, Brandon Sanderson, we need the next, right? You don't have that. Unfortunately, I suppose, right? For your bank account, you don't have that, that publisher who's saying we need the next book right now. But if you don't have that publisher saying we need the next book right now, then write the best book instead of the next book. Does that make sense? The goal of art isn't to attain perfection. The goal is to share who we are and how we see the world. Do we, Rick Rubin and I, have to be the 10 millionth and 10 million and 1th person to tell you that perfect is just not attainable because it doesn't exist in the world of art? And yeah, man, fantasy novels are art. Science fiction is art. Horror is art. Romance is art. Combinations of all those things are art. Yeah? Some stuff about making a point that I guess we can make a point to look to. I underline this because I don't know about great art. I don't know how to make great art. I don't know how an artist can decide this is great. Or I'm going for greatness. Greatness is decided by other people, probably long after you're dead. Flipping through some stuff. Again, I'm not gonna read the whole book to you. Don't worry about this post-it note. The best art divides the audience. If everyone likes it, you probably haven't gone far enough. I absolutely believe that that's true. Yeah. I have said before, and I really believe this isn't just me being, I don't know, whatever, trying to play off like I got some bad reviews and so now I'm too cool for it or whatever. I would much rather get a review that's like, this is the worst book I've ever read and this guy needs to just die, than, I guess it was okay. If I can't get you to really love it or really hate it, then I have screwed up. I'm not going for hate me if you will, but I threw that thing out there. Oh, here I said this describes writing. When there are no material, time, and budget constraints, you have unlimited options. Pause and think about that. Okay? There are no material, time, and budget constraints. You probably already have the laptop or whatever, yeah? Time is as much time as you can put into it. Budget could be as little as $0 that you haven't already spent on whatever software you're using, free, whatever, yeah? Writing is the cheapest business to get into as a startup. So why screw that up? Right? When you accept limitations, your range of choices is reduced. I have to have this book done by X whatever date. I can only write if I'm using this incredibly expensive fountain pen in a leather-bound journal. Or could you use the pen that you grabbed for free out of the hotel room? Or it was just laying around the house, and a spiral notebook that you got for like $1. Whether imposed by design or by necessity, it's helpful to see limitations as opportunities, right? So it's can definitely feel like bad news that there isn't a giant audience out there going, hey man, we need your next book. Right? There isn't an editor and agent going like, oh my God, we need to get this book. There's, a check for $100,000 at the end of that and all those pressures, right? Yeah, we're all, I guess, in some way or another, maybe trying to get to that point. But if we're not at that point, why pretend we're at that point? Use that time. Use that freedom to do your best work, not your fastest work. I don't know. Flipping. Success has nothing to do with variables outside yourself. I don't know. Well, okay. So this is another one where I wrote a post a long, long time ago called Success versus Success, where basically I said you have to define what successful means to you. If you're thinking, well, unless I have sold, unless I've gotten into the top 5 of the New York Times bestseller list, then I am a failure. Okay. That's a really difficult goal that you set for yourself. I want to finish this novel and I want to be happy with it. If you have done that, that's something that you have the power to do, right? Then you can get that success. So define what your success is. And boy, I'm telling you again, it seems like the millionth time, writing fiction, writing in general, is not a get-rich-quick scheme. It's not. There are a billion faster ways to make a buck in America than writing. Okay? Now you can't say you were never told. More stuff. I'm going to flip through because by now you know that I think this book is really interesting because it's just mixed in with a little bit of the kind of metaphysical, which again, as the book progresses, that starts to fall away. It's just tons of really good advice and advice, not prescriptive. Here, this is what you must do in order to succeed. This is just how to be in this head, right? To be a creative individual. To be an artist in one way or another. Right? So this is another one where I said here in the margin, it's okay, I guess, is the worst review. Be aware of strong responses. If you're immediately turned off by an experience, it's worth examining why. Powerful reactions often indicate deeper wells of meaning, and perhaps by exploring them, you'll be led to the next step on your creative path. Every artist has heroes, right? Creators whose work we connect with. And this is one, again, we've talked about this a little bit in the past. And I'm sure we'll talk about it again. Can we, when can we, how can we separate the art and the artist? So I can say that without any hesitation, I'm a fan of the work of H.P. Lovecraft. I'm a fan of the movies of Woody Allen. Does that mean that I would hang with either of those guys? That everything about who they are and kind of how they've conducted their lives are in keeping with whatever values I have? So do you have heroes as people? And I think that's where we get into trouble. When we're like, this person is the greatest. I want to be just like who, right? Who, until you find out that there are a long list of comedians who are like, I learned how to do this by listening to Bill Cosby albums over and over and over again. Who then heard what kind of a guy he was and just had to, I'm sure, be thinking, what now? As a kid, I started reading H.P. Lovecraft and was like, this guy is the bomb. And then later found out that that guy was a racist and anti-Semite, a product of his time and era and place, the, culture that he came out of, who failed to rise above that, or at least rise above that completely. In some cases, right, the behavior of an artist makes them literally a criminal. Sometimes it just makes them kind of, well, it's kind of sad that he lived in that time, that he wasn't able to sort of see the errors of his upbringing, etc. So, do you have heroes? I do. But, you got to learn to say, I love this work. This is the kind of writing that I want to do. Harlan Ellison was that guy for me. That does not mean that you sign on to their every human failing. Yeah. Create in the present rather than anticipating the future. Hey, indie authors out there who have been infused with all the marketing stuff. I'm snapping my fingers. You got to go really fast, and you got to write fast, and you got to do these things, and you have to hit these time things in the schedule. Create in the present. Write the book. The only thing you have control over is the quality of your own work. Not what the, Amazon, Kindle, Unlimited, whatever ecosystem is going to look like a year from now. Living in discovery is at all times preferable to living through assumptions. Yeah, we must have intellectual curiosity. We must be learning all the time. The answer is out there. Perhaps it's obvious. We just haven't come across it yet. Right? I mean, how often is this true? This is what propels science. Where are all the aliens? Why does it seem like we're alone in the universe? Well, I don't know. They're really super far away and we're not actually looking. Question answered. Sometimes you got to go out there and say, how do you do it then? How do you get with it? The answer is out there. You have to go and somehow come across it. And, this is what, how old do you have to be before you stop doing this? I hope I will never be that old. I just turned 60 and I'm saying, I already do this, but could I do more? You decide when you're too old. You decide when you have failed. You decide when you have stopped. Creativity is something you are, not only something you do. It's a way of moving through the world every minute, every day. Yeah, intellectual curiosity again. You're absorbing everything. And that doesn't mean that you're consciously observing. You're like, wait, hold on, I got to take notes about what you just said at dinner. Right? You have to just make sure that your brain is always open. The stuff that matters, you'll remember. You have to take notes through the day. Right? You don't have to keep a commonplace book or learn to journal like whatever Stoic philosopher is telling you have to journal. It's exhausting, isn't it? This is the planner that Herman Melville used. So I'm like, what the heck, right? Just be open to the world. Absorb, and it'll stick, and it'll come out when you least expect it, and it'll come out when you need it. There's no pattern or logic to this enigmatic process. Not all projects are the same. No two people are the same. The project is the guide we follow, and each comes with its own conditions and requirements. Absolutely true. Every book you write will be different. Every short story you write will be different. Every poem you write will be different. Art is far, far more powerful than our plans for it. Yes, it is. smudge of red ink there. It happens. It happens. You know, I lived in this book. An artist earns the title simply through self-expression as they work in their own way at their own pace. Are you a writer? I don't know. Did you write some stuff? Yes. Thank you. Well, this deserves to be read then, huh? Let's see. Artists have created in every way possible, at the extremes of chaos and order, and at the meeting point of different methods at once. There is no right time, right strategy, or right equipment. Figure out how to write everywhere, anytime. Yeah. There may be benefits to taking breaks and stepping away and returning at a later point. I believe this to be true for sure. Again, it's about, this is how much hustle culture are you doing, right? Are you hustling your way through a novel, or are you feeling your way through a novel? You should be doing the latter. Sharing art is the price of making it. Exposing your vulnerability is the fee. Out of this experience comes regeneration, finding freshness within yourself for the next project and all the ones to follow. This means submit that work, right? Write a short story. I wrote about this. Short stories, here's what's good about short stories. They don't take a year to write, and you will get a no really fast. Get it out there, get rejected, get some understanding of the giant subjective cloud in which you live without having to take a year to do it. To put all of your eggs into that one novel basket. You know? Get it out there. Get rejected. It's okay. You know which authors have never been rejected? None of the authors have never been rejected. Okay, it's part of it. Get it out there. Take art seriously without going about it in a serious way. Remember that sense of play that he talked about earlier, and I've talked about here. Or anyway at the blog. If you're looking for the work to support you, you may be asking too much of it. We create in service to art, not for what we can get from art. Remember that, hustle culture guys. Right? Writing indie fantasy novels is not a get-rich-quick scheme. It's not. It is not. You will make more money faster driving for Uber. Here I wrote applies to editors too. We are not looking for someone who thinks like us, works like us, and shares our taste. If you and a collaborator agree on everything, then one of you may be unnecessary. This is the kind of stuff that we need to talk about when it comes time to talk about how do you choose an editor, right? A freelancer, somebody like me, right? Are you looking for somebody who's just going to tell you, gosh darn it, you're the greatest? Well, I'd love to, you know, I try the best I can to say, this is what's working. But you're really hiring me to say, this is what's not working. And not just sort of like, no, I don't know, but specifically right here. And if we just agree on everything, that it's all good, well, what do you need me for? Yeah? And that's true of beta readers. If you have a so-called beta reader who loves you and doesn't want to say, yeah, I don't even understand what the hell this is, all right, then you're getting nothing from that. Yeah? You know. Everybody listening to this knows what I mean. And all art is poetry. I don't know, man. All poetry is art, for sure. Art goes deeper than thought, deeper than the stories about yourself. It breaks through inner walls and accesses what's behind. If you can't go into the darkest corners, you're in the wrong business. You know, I mean, we all have no-go areas, and I get it, and I respect that, right? You should not be, well, Phil said I have to just basically murder my psyche in order to write this fantasy novel. No, I mean, no. But kinda, you know, you have to be able to access some stuff. And not only bad stuff, right? I mean, if you're a horror author, probably mostly bad stuff. But the good stuff too. You need to be able to dig around in there. And you have to, because you are open to the world, yeah, like Rick Rubin is saying, like I've said, you are letting your intellectual curiosity move you through a life of absorbing interesting stuff. And by interesting stuff, I mean stuff you find interesting. Right? Then you will have stuff to dig around in and pull out and say, right? Ooh, this is a little bit, I'm nervous about this. And if you're a little bit nervous about it when you're writing it, ooh, that's the good stuff right there. That's the good stuff right there. We have stories about ourselves. And these are not who we are. We have stories about the work. And those are not what the work is. We're going to end it with that. Simple, no dust jacket. The Creative Active Way of Being by Rick Rubin. I don't know. It's going to be, you're going to have to decide for yourself, but don't let some goofy review or this one make a decision for you. I think everybody who is doing creative work out there in any media should really take a look at this book. I think it was fantastic, which is to say, there was stuff in there I agreed with, stuff I didn't agree with, stuff that I was confused by, stuff that I still have to think about. And that to me is priceless, right? Get me thinking about the creative process. And Rick Rubin, you did. Thank you very much. Thank you. If you haven't read the blog post yet, read the blog post too. And I'll see you again soon. This has been Fantasy Author's Handbook. As always, behind the camera this time, I'm Phil. Thank you for watching. Please hit that like button. Please hit subscribe. It's all free. You know the drill. And I will see you again soon. Thank you very much.